Hi, my name's Garreth. I'm the consultant medical herbalist here at the Wild Sage. We've been doing a couple of different information sessions on common ailments with remedies and dietary advice. And one of the ones that has been quite common, as you'll understand, would be eczema. So we wanted to talk a little bit about eczema and what the treatment protocols are from a herbalist perspective. Obviously that'll include something to do with the diet. So it covers a number of different types of eczema. You will have heard of, if you have it, you'll have heard of discoid eczema, you'll have heard of nummular eczema, varicose eczema, gravitational eczema if you're pregnant, stasis eczema. There's just a number of different terms and definitions that come with it. There's a bit of an overlap with psoriasis and seborrheic dermatitis. Some of the dietary protocols will all be quite similar in how we do that. If you have been searching online and you're trying to find out what the best protocol is for eczema, I'm quite sure that you have tried all of the diets out there, all of the protocols out there. Steroids might work initially, but whenever you stop, you get a flare-up, or they're not working at all, and it can be frustrating and it can be stressful, which in turn exacerbates quite often the symptoms that you have with the eczema. Allergy testing, some of you may have already done allergy testing, and they're a good place to start, but it's often incomplete because they can exclude chemical intolerances as opposed to foods. Foods will show up, but not necessarily a particular chemical for you. And often they can be inaccurate, showing the things that you eat more often as opposed to the things that you're intolerant to. In relation to allergy, I did a session a couple of weeks ago on atopy and asthma and hay fever. So eczema is another sign of that. It's an allergic response. And it kind of comes under this whole category of atopy, and it's dramatically growing. It's in epidemic proportions at the moment, with more and more people claiming that they have eczema, psoriasis, asthma, or allergies in general. In relation to eczema then, what would be the triggers? So some of the main triggers that you will hear being spoken of for most people would be dairy and eggs. They are the ones that are the most common complaints. So it's always a great place to start, is removing dairy or eggs from the diet, so that it doesn't exacerbate any of the problems with eczema. Beyond that, some of the other things that you might find exacerbate it would be formula milk, wheat, corn, or citrus fruit. There's growing body of evidence to suggest that the reason that food diaries don't work, or eliminating foods, is that some people have a chemical intolerance. So there's kind of growing research into areas such as salicylate intolerance, histamine intolerance, and amine intolerance. Now the problem with that is whenever you start looking at chemicals as being an aggravating factor for any kind of allergy, you start looking then at what foods you can and cannot eat. And whenever you are looking at the kind of low histamine diets or low salicylate diets, it becomes a very difficult diet to follow. And I personally feel that we were put in this earth to enjoy as much food as we possibly can. And I understand that we may be at a stage where we can't tolerate those chemicals at this minute in time, but I do believe that it's possible to get our bodies back into a place where we can enjoy kind of food in moderation. It's just about whenever we go over the top and we have too much of it. Some of the things that can exacerbate eczema would be sweat, and sometimes the cold, sometimes wool can exacerbate the symptoms of it, and then things such as stress and anxiety, or immune dysfunction. We talked a bit in the last system about the immune system and how it works. So just to give you a brief kind of summary of it, there are in the immune system B cells and T cells, and they're both produced in the bones. The B cells stay or are manufactured there. The T cells spend a little bit of time in the thymus gland, it's kind of like a boot camp where they get trained and educated. And they form, the B cells is your innate immune system, and the adaptive immune system are the T cells. And they communicate to each other through cytokines, these little communicators within the body. as to how to act. So if you have a foreign allergy, so something that comes into the body or something to the skin, and it is recognized by the immune system as being foreign, the T helper cells come along and they latch on to part of it, the antigen, and they sometimes gobble it up or treat it, they break it up in different ways, and they take the antigen and present that to the T bodies, the T helper cells that come along and check to see if they have the appropriate antibody to attack it. So along comes one lucky little T cell whose destiny is being fulfilled because they latch on to this antigen. They have the right sequence and they start to reproduce dramatically, and as a result of that they are able to then the body starts to stimulate the cytokines and starts to stimulate an immune response. So you get itchy red skin, inflammation, swelling, the blood plasma becomes a little bit more permeable to allow the attack of this foreign invader to take place. And all of that is great if it works well and we get to a state where there's inflammation, so that we come into a place of kind of anti-inflammatories and reduce the immune response. The difficulty for anybody that has eczema is that doesn't seem to kick in. We're just always being exacerbated, and the symptoms are progressively getting worse. We also talked a little bit about the T cells are quite good because they latch on to the mast cells. Mast cells are B cells, and they are full of histamine, so they release their histamine into the system, and that starts this inflammatory cascade happening. A couple of things that are good to know if you understand the immune system is that histamine needs to be broken down, and it's done through methylation, and there's a specific component called DAO that is responsible for breaking down histamine. So some people can be low in DAO. That means that there's a buildup of histamine in your body, which means that there would be a buildup of inflammation in your body and the eczema will be worse. We want to make sure that your body is able to clear the excess histamine, both by ensuring that you have enough DAO in your system, and then also making sure that once it is broken down, that it gets to leave the body through excretion and isn't being remetabolized and then reused and increasing histamine to the body. So in relation to herbs and the herbal strategies, there's two parts to this. One of them is going to be the herbal treatment and how we wish to use herbs to be able to support the body. But it's almost worthless if it's not being done in conjunction with diet, because there's so much that's internally going on to produce eczema. Eczema, although it happens on the skin, is usually a sign that there's a problem with the liver, that there's that the digestive tract is not working properly. So digestion is key. But symptomatically, a herbalist is going to want to look at the skin. If it's dry, it's itchy, then the two of the herbs that we may want to use would be chickweed. It's cooling, it's a really nice herb to be able to put onto the skin, and then licorice. Licorice contains glycyrrhetinic acid, easy for you to say, and there's been quite a lot of research now to suggest that is good both as an antibacterial to stop any infection from happening in the skin, but also helpful in eczema itself. There's a range of other herbs that are demulcent and soothing, so viola might be another one. And typically we would tend to put, if it's a wet eczema and it's oozing, we'll put on a cream, and if it's dry we might put on an ointment. If you're suffering a flare-up and it's particularly bad, usually I would suggest something like a wet wrap. So that's whenever you take a herb such as nettle or chamomile or oats, and you soak some fabric in it, and you put that onto the part of your skin that is showing eczema and allow it to sit there overnight. So you might need to cover it with some cling film or with a dry wrap so that it's able to treat the eczema well. And I'll mention nettle, I'm quite sure, in a minute or two anyway. In relation to other things that we're going to look at what kind of toxins are around in the house and what toxins you might be eating. Is there dust? Are there chemicals? Is there something in your laundry that might exacerbate the problem? We might also come across electromagnetic radiation. So things like, where is the router in the house? Where's your mobile phones? Do you sleep in the room with the mobile phone? And trying to remove some of that electromagnetic radiation from your house. BPAs and plastics. So are you using microwave dinners? Are you storing things in Tupperware? And are they BPA free? It might also look at things like perfumes, skincare products, and even paint or furniture, even though it's dry, can still emit quite a lot of toxins in around the house. We'll also monitor and have a look at water intake. And one of the reasons for that is because people who are dehydrated tend to have more histamine in the body, and they're not able to break it down. So exercise, whilst good for many things, if you are having a flare-up at this point in time, you're not getting enough water and you're doing exercise, the histamine levels will increase quite considerably. In relation to reducing anxiety, so quite a lot of us know that eczema is stress related. If you are experiencing stress, if you have a heightened emotional response to something, that can quite often be a follow-up of a rash, inflammation and an itch. So some herbs that are quite good at dealing with stress would be skullcap, chamomile, passion flower, Californian poppy might be another one. We want to reduce inflammation because eczema is a state of high inflammation. So we're looking at things like turmeric and black pepper. Milk thistle is quite good because it allows the liver to work better by recycling glutathione, and things like frankincense or willow, something that's anti-inflammatory that we can throw into the mix. We're also going to look at your gastrointestinal tract, and we want to repair some of the damage that might be done there. So ultimately things like gluten can allow the digestive tract to be porous and let toxins into the body. Although that said, whenever it comes to eczema, only about 3-4% of people really report that becoming gluten-free is beneficial and helpful to alleviate some of the stress to it. So we're going to look at things like slippery elm or marshmallow root or plantain, things that are mucilaginous to the digestive tract, and it's just to kind of add a little bit of a layer to the lining of the gut, so that your immune system's not fighting everything that's coming past it, and it's getting protected by a little bit of mucilage. We're going to try and support your liver, so things like milk thistle again, maybe dandelion root, fumery or berberis. Berberis aquifolium is particularly good for eczema and also good for the digestive tract. We would like to support your adrenal glands, so if you're in a state of stress, we might suggest things like licorice or ashwagandha or Siberian ginseng to that mix, to bring a little bit of balance and to alleviate some of the stress that you might be under. The immune system's quite often in overdrive, so we want to use herbs that don't stop the immune system but modulate it. Herbs such as astragalus is a really useful herb for something about modulating the immune system. Reishi mushroom or calendula can also be useful for this. Alteratives. So alteratives really are changing herbs that alter blood in this case and the lymphatic tissue. So we're thinking of things like the nettle, burdock, calendula is going to be up there. The only thing I would say is that whenever you have things that are trying to clear out the lymphatic system, such as cleavers or burdock, is that sometimes it can actually make symptoms worse because the deep toxins are embedded in there, and once they start to come up, it aggravates things. So it's very much you increase that dosage really quite slowly to allow the body the opportunity to detox and to get rid of anything that's causing imbalance to the immune system. We will want to reduce histamine dominance. So we want to do that by three herbs in particular are known to be useful here. Nettle is particularly useful. It hits, it kind of lands in the histamine receptors of the body. but it's not big enough as a molecule to cross over the blood-brain barrier. So where antihistamines can sometimes make you feel drowsy, nettle won't do that. It also has the added bonus of being able to stop the T helper cells from releasing histamine from the mast cell. So it's a particularly useful herb to try and stop inflammation. Chinese skullcap and albizia are two of the others that might be useful in cases such as just really difficult and chronic eczema. Alcohol is a big no-no. So we talked about histamine being broken down by DAO, and DAO alcohol is a big inhibitor of. So if you want to decrease the amount of histamine in your body, it's really highly recommended that you don't take as much alcohol. If all of that work on the digestive tract has been done, we're going to try and repopulate good bacteria to the gut. So Lactobacillus acidophilus, Lactobacillus rhamnosus, and Lactobacillus reuteri are probably the most popular probiotics, along with Bifidobacterium bifidum. They are kind of 5 billion parts of bacterium in a tablet, so it's a really good place to start to repopulate the gut. And interestingly, it's not something you have to take for a long period of time. It's just enough to get the bacteria into the system. Another alternative to that would be something like a milk kefir. Obviously dairy is not great, so you can get dairy-free kefirs that will be able to help repopulate the gut. If stress is an aggravating factor, sleep is also one of the major exacerbating factors for eczema. So we want to make sure you're sleeping well enough. And if you're not, herbs such as valerian, passion flower, skullcap might be quite useful. Again, the Californian poppy might be up there. Supplements are often suggested by dietitians and naturopaths. I am one of those people that I'm not particularly fussed on supplements, because if you start with one supplement and it's doing one particular action, then you need to find another supplement to be able to complement it so that your body's doing what it should do. I'm much more likely to kind of pull back and allow herbs to try and get the body to do its job properly. But there are some supplements with evidence of being really helpful here. So in particular, things like vitamin E, fish oil, flaxseed oil, about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of that daily. Zinc is helpful both at increasing inflammation and as an anti-inflammatory. And then complex B vitamins or calcium. If I had a choice, I'd say the fish oils and the complex B with a little bit of zinc in the diet would be suffice. Next up, there's some research being done about the pH of the skin. So people who have eczema tend to have a pH that is kind of almost, rather than it being kind of a 5, it's maybe a pH of 7. And as a result of that, if you think a lot of the soaps and dermatological medications that are being given, they can quite often be alkaline. And so rather than actually make the skin more acid, they do the reverse. So there's a sense in which things like carbolic soap can actually be quite useful, or ways in which to change the pH of the skin from a 7 down to maybe a 5.5. So things like diluted apple cider vinegar on the skin has reputedly made really the world of difference. And also in connection with acidity on the skin, but stomach acid. So people who have eczema have a tendency to have a slightly more alkaline stomach. So there's a lot of talk about, having an alkaline rich diet and making sure that you aren't very acidic, but your stomach acid itself needs to be in a place that it's acidic, particularly for nutrient absorption, to get the fats, the minerals and the vitamins that are fat soluble into the body. And there are links between eczema and H. pylori, which is a little organism that seems to sit on the lining of the stomach. And again, there seems to be some correlation between people who have eczema and people who have H. pylori. So we want to ensure that the stomach and the acid is acidic enough, both to discourage H. pylori from being there and also making sure that you're absorbing the right nutrients. If you have done all of that and still finding it difficult and the symptoms are still ongoing, one of the things that I would suggest is trying to get some genetic testing for the MTHFR gene. Now the MTHFR gene is part of the methylation cycle, and quite often somebody can be deficient in that. And if you are doing a test, it's a test for homocysteine, and if there's a level of 6.5 to 8, then we maybe want to look at a supplement for that. So it's an L-methylfolate supplement that we would be taking to try and see if we can move on the metabolism to make sure that the methylation cycle is working and in place, and that you're able to break down and get rid of toxins. So look, that's what the herbalist would do. Kind of finally coming down onto what the nutrition side of it, and it's nutrition, digestion. I mean, one of the big things that you can do even before coming to see a herbalist would be to have a food diary, which gives us a really good indication as to what you're having for breakfast, lunch and dinner every day. And just to remember that a trigger can happen anything between 1 and 3 days. And if it's a chemical sensitivity that you have, then it can take up to 7 days for that reaction to show. So it's important to be able to have that long-term view and be able to monitor things over time. Now, I mentioned earlier that the diets that are low in histamine, low in salicylate, low in amines are very, very restrictive, and I'm not in favor of keeping to them for a particularly long period of time. I feel that the body should be able to handle most things. The problem is that we live in a world that is filled with pesticides and is nutritionally depleted of good vitamins and supplements. So I don't want anybody to end up on an impossible diet that can't be continued. It would be good to do it for a short time so that you can kind of identify what's the trigger foods. Gluten, it's good to know that it's not a big problem for most people. So you'd start with egg and milk. And then you might want to look at reducing histamines in your diet. And also, as you're herbally trying to ensure that you're breaking down the histamine, you also maybe want to reduce the amount of histamine that you're taking into your diet. So you would eat lots of colour, lots of skins, pulses, sardines and mackerel. But you want to avoid foods such as alcohol, fermented foods such as dried meats, cured meats, dietary foods, yogurts, sauerkrauts, and then dried fruits such as apricots or anything that's rich in sulfites. Avocados, eggplant, spinach, smoked meats and shellfish would all be ruled out for a short time to be able to see if that makes a difference. There's a number of other foods that trigger histamine in the body, such as bananas and tomatoes, wheat germ, beans and papaya, chocolate, citrus fruit, and nuts, specifically walnuts and cashews and peanuts. Some food dyes and additives can also cause a problem. Foods that block the DAO from breaking down histamine, so again, it's into the alcohol, but black tea, mate, green tea, and some of the energy drinks can be particularly bad at that. So think anything that has tannins or that kind of tanniny taste is something that you may want to avoid for a short period of time. For some people, salicylates are an aggravating factor. So what contains salicylate? Well, salicylates are in fruit and veg, so obviously it's not something you want to cut out, but the very high ones would be tomato and avocado, citrus, teas, nuts. Also to be mindful of things like aspirin will have salicylates in it, and you may end up, because of the detox, with a headache, and so you don't want to be taking aspirin, or for that matter ibuprofen, because ibuprofen has caffeine in it. So you want to try and use something such as paracetamol, just a straight simple paracetamol, or herbs as an alternative. Natural foods or some natural chemicals, so MSG, which is in a lot of Chinese food and processed food, nitrates and sulfites, such as red wine and dried fruit, can all be potential triggers. I guess if you want to know what the worst culprits are, grapes, oranges, kiwi, soy, tomatoes, avocado, broccoli, dried fruit, deli meats, egg, chocolate, dairy. So you can see why you don't want to cut this out for a very long time. So how do you approach it? What is the best way to really handle this? Well, first of all, enjoy the meals you love. Clear the cupboards and do so guilt-free, because there's nothing worse than wasting money on food, and we don't want to contribute to the food mountain. What I would suggest is that you take then a week to both cut out sugar and to cut out caffeine to allow the detox to start kicking off. And that will allow you to go through the rest of the detox without the headaches, because you're likely to get it in that week without the sugar and the coffee. So you'll experience side effects to this, such as craving, binging, anxiety, mood. You could even get headaches and body tremors, and fatigue. It's a little bit of a flu because you're encouraging your body to go into ketosis. That would be really for the first week. And once you have done that, it's to address things within the gut where there's perhaps a leaky gut. So we want to address things like constipation or diarrhea, if there's been excessive gas, excessive bloating. And that would be the week to really look at things like glutamine or some herbs to be able to go and repair the digestive tract. I guess then you're into week 3. And this, if it's needed, so you may not need to do week 2, but if it's needed, then week 3, the foods that you are really going to focus on are mung beads, things rich in magnesium and folate and potassium and vitamin C. You might also use flaxseed or red cabbage, and reds are great because they're full of anthocyanins. Allium, so particularly the greens of spring onion. If you're not able to take the bulbs, such as garlic or onion, but the leaf of the spring onion can be quite good. Beetroot is a funny one because it's alkalizing. It's an antioxidant. It's folate rich. It has iron. It lowers the blood pressure. It reduces clots. It prevents fatty liver and boosts the detox, but it has some salicylates. It's one of those foods where the gains outweigh the losses. So it's definitely one that I would recommend people taking. Oats, vitamin E, potassium, iron, magnesium, and silica are also herbs that, or those vitamins and minerals are actually in the oats, and so it's a really good food to take. Pears, you can replace cocoa with carob, because it will help control hunger cravings, and raw cashews soaked in water can sometimes remove some of the contaminants in it. If you're looking for cooking and what to use, well then pure butter or ghee can be used, or rice bran oil, particularly in those first few weeks of the detox. You would try and avoid coconut oil and olive oil for the first couple of weeks because they're rich in salicylates, so it would just monitor whether or not that's something that you're sensitive to. So as you can see, you do not go to a herbalist for the quick fix. It's not something that we're going to give you a petroleum-based cream or a steroids to try and reduce the inflammation topically. We want to go from the inside out, and we want to be thorough in our approach. It's not something that's easy. It's something that takes a lot of work from the clients coming to see us. But if you are interested in seeing a herbalist, if you are wanting to take it further, I mean, one of the best things you can possibly do before even coming to see us the first time is to start a food diary, to have a record of what you're eating and to see what impact that might have on you and on your skin. And then that would allow us to see where we go from there, so that you get the right dietary and nutritional advice. But it also means that you can see the logic as to why we're going on the approach that we're doing. So look, I understand that eczema can be extremely frustrating and very difficult for people. But hopefully there's a couple of things that have been mentioned in this video that are of use and have maybe prompted either a little reminder or a new strategy that you might be able to apply yourself. And by all means, I can take consultations online via Zoom, or you can come and see me here in the clinic. So I hope it's been useful. If it has, please like and subscribe or share widely. We really appreciate your support. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.